This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Zimbabwe prepares for final state send-off for former President Robert Mugabe. President Ramaphosa assures South Africa is seeking ways to root out xenophobia and xenophobic attacks. And we update you on the final round of campaigns ahead of elections in Tunisia. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. And tonight I'm alongside my colleague Rama Nyang, who has our business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Richard. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The World Bank has lifted a freeze on lending to Tanzania. We'll explore why. And Zambia has cut its growth outlook for 2019 in half, citing a combination of adverse weather as well as its debt service obligations. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
Thank you so much, Rama. We begin the hour in Zimbabwe, where former President Robert Mugabe will be laid to rest on Sunday in the capital, Harare. Foreign dignitaries are arriving in the country ahead of the state funeral scheduled for Saturday. Mugabe will then be buried at the National Heroes Acre Monument a day later. According to Mugabe's nephews, the official ceremony will be followed by a private traditional family event. This contradicts comments from a day earlier, which suggested that Mugabe's family was resisting the government's burial plans. The 95-year-old died in Singapore a week ago now. His body arrived in Zimbabwe on Wednesday and has been lying in state after the government announced 3 days of national mourning. Well, we are joined by Farai Wakatuya in Harare for the details on the latest on Robert Mugabe's burial. Farai, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. It appears there is now an agreement on where the late Robert Mugabe will be buried. What more can you tell us about this, Farai?
Indeed, Richard, there seems to be a consensus that has been reached. We heard from that family spokesperson saying that, they had reached an agreement that the traditional chiefs who have the final say in terms of where the former president will be laid to rest have agreed that his remains be interred at the National Heroes Shrine, and that will go ahead on Sunday. What we do know is, as you quite rightly said in your intro, that there will be a private traditional ceremony that will follow. We're not sure when that will take place. The details of that are still to be availed. What we do know that the Kushungo clan, where the former president hails from, as well as his sons and some of his family members, went to the Heroes Shrine earlier today to inspect the location where his body will be laid. So as it stands, it looks like indeed the former president will be laid to rest at this Heroes Shrine that is reserved for liberation war heroes.
All right, Farai, if you will, talk us through what we should expect in Saturday's state funeral of Zimbabwe's former president.
Well, I think we expect a huge send-off. It's going to be a big event. It's being held at the National Stadium. It's a 60,000 capacity seater stadium, and preparations are happening as we speak on the ground. They're setting it up, preparing for that event. 11 heads of state have confirmed their attendance. Some of them are staying actually at the hotel behind me here, the Rainbow Towers in the capital city, Harare. A special envoy dispatched by President Xi Jinping has also arrived in the country. He arrived this morning and had an opportunity to and was due to meet President Emerson Mnangagwa later in the day to deliver the condolence message from the Chinese president. But suffice to say, getting back to the details of tomorrow, we do know that it's going to be a ceremony full of pomp and fanfare, celebration of the life of an icon and a hero. People will get an opportunity to have their final farewell. We expect a lot of military ceremony, a lot of military pomp and fanfare. And also, I think many Zimbabweans who have not had an opportunity yet to go and pay their respects over the last 2 days will also want to turn up there. Members of political parties have been invited and will be there, have confirmed their attendance. So it will be a big event. It kicks off early in the morning, according to the program. We've been told around 9 a.m. local time, and by lunchtime the program should be done. So it'll be quite packed, but I think, it will be a big event.
Okay, Farai Wakatuya talking to us from Harare. Farai, thank you for that update and report. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping's special envoy, Gu Zhengzhou, has arrived in Zimbabwe to attend the state funeral of former President Robert Mugabe. The Chinese special envoy is also scheduled to meet with Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa during his visit. China and Zimbabwe remain committed to strengthening ties. Gu's tour is at the invitation of the Zimbabwean government, and he is scheduled to leave for China on Sunday. And in neighboring South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the country is committed to rooting out xenophobia and xenophobic attacks. He was speaking in Pretoria while visiting the home of the taxi driver whose death triggered violent attacks against foreign nationals. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more on that story.
The violence that engulfed South Africa in the past few weeks was sparked by the killing of a taxi driver in Pretoria. Reports state that an alleged drug dealer, a foreign national, shot and killed the taxi driver. The taxi driver had apparently been trying to stop the peddling of drugs. After the killing, South African taxi drivers and locals instantly retaliated, taking the matter into their own hands. On Friday, in his capacity as the leader of the governing African National Congress, President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the family of the slain taxi driver, Jabu Baloyi.
Jabu Baloyi has become a major symbol on the issue of drugs because he took a stand. And in the course of taking a stance and a stand against drugs, he sacrificed his life because he is one of those members of our community who felt very strongly against the peddling of drugs and the drug abuse that's happening in our communities, and he sought to stop that.
Ramaphosa used the opportunity of this visit to also commit to ensuring that xenophobic attacks are swiftly dealt with.
We are totally committed against attacks and to foreign nationals, including xenophobic tendencies or feelings towards others. We need, as South Africans, yes, to deal with the challenges that we face, whether it be job issues or whatever, and drugs. But as we do all that, we should also make sure that we do not take out our anger against people from other nations, and indeed against anyone amongst us as well.
A number of foreign nationals have opted to leave South Africa with immediate effect after the attacks, citing a fear for their lives. 12 people died during the attacks, 10 of them South Africans. President Ramaphosa has opted to delegate the International Relations and Cooperations Minister Naledi Pandor to attend the session at the United Nations General Assembly later this month to ensure that he attends to immediate and critical issues in the country, such as this one. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
The African Union Commission says the xenophobic attacks and violence in South Africa needs to be permanently addressed. The officials also say that they have fears that such unacceptable acts could jeopardize the continental agenda of integration. CGTN's Girum Chala has more.
The situation in South Africa over the past weeks was indeed worrying for the continental organization, the African Union. The xenophobic attacks, lootings and killings against fellow Africans in parts of the country, including in Johannesburg, was already sending out a strong alarm. The chairperson of the union, Mosafaki Mohammed, has wasted no time in condemning the looting, destruction of African migrants' properties. The African Union is now encouraged by the arrests made by the South African authorities, and it is calling on the SA government to take immediate steps to protect the lives of people and their properties, ensure that all perpetrators are brought to justice at the same time. For the AU, there is also another worry. The xenophobic acts in South Africa could send out wrong signals to the rest of the continent at a time when issues of regional integration, trade, among African states and African passport are being pushed for. And that is why, through all its channels and personnel, as well as the SADC regional grouping, the African Union is urging for the end of African migrants targeting attacks in South Africa. It was advised addressing the root cause which led up to such gruesome acts is vital under the principles of continental solidarity. Group Dara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
More than 200 Mozambican and Zimbabwean citizens are on their way back to their respective countries after violent xenophobic attacks in South Africa. 3 buses left the community center from Katlehong Township, where foreign nationals sought shelter since last week when foreign-owned businesses were looted and burned. Hundreds of nationals from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria have been repatriated since the violence began earlier this month. South Africa promised last Thursday to tackle the prejudice fueling the wave of deadly riots and xenophobic attacks amidst international anger over the attacks.
I'm going to Maputo. Because that country is not okay, man. It's rough. I go to Maputo just to start again my life.
They've been staying here since last week, Thursday, and we as the Red Cross, we've been providing meals and what we call restoring family links with these people so that they could call, giving them telephone to call home, to let home that they are okay, they are fine. So they've been staying here since from last week, Thursday, till today. So it's fully 8 days today.
Another group of foreigners, this time from neighboring Mozambique, also took shelter. They've been in the hall for a week now.
Yes, we can confirm that we've got 125 Mozambican nationals that left here at this hall, at the H. Williams Hall, with 3 buses and a truck. So they've basically including the children. Some of the adults they've got their children with. So in total is that number, and they've gone escorted through to Mozambique border post.
Many Mozambicans who fled the violence lost everything, including the tools of their trade. In Dito's case, he was a welder. It was all destroyed in the arson attack on his home in the Holomisa informal settlement, and he can't go home.
Even government is saying don't go that side because it's not finished inside my place. You see? So that's why I'm staying inside. I don't know where to go, where going to open, I don't know, because I'm not going to space, I'm not going to job, I'm not going to nothing. I'm here.
Kalitso lost everything except for the clothes on his back. He wants to find a new place and start earning money again. He can't go home empty-handed. He's also lost all of his documents.
So I have money, or I have to go see another place. I'm going to say, because another people, another place doesn't have question, you know what I'm saying? I don't say another people must go out, never say like that. You can stay there, the parent there, I'm going to stay there. Now we should only 2 months to go home. So I can have something to go home. I give my children, I give my mother, you know what I'm saying? Because, that side, no money. Just when I'm coming here, I'm looking some money.
It's not a question of whether these Mozambicans can or want to go home. It's a question of they can't afford to get home, and they can't go back to where they were staying either here in the Katlehong area because it's still too dangerous. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Katlehong in South Africa.
You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got a lot more news coming your way after the break, including we update you on the final round of campaigns ahead of elections in Tunisia. And how an initiative in Western Kenya is helping farmers to produce healthier produce.
Solemn, introvert. Even if he was just standing, you would see him, he would just stand. You will see he's somewhere else.
Zimbabwe became the diplomatic hub of the region, all because of meaningful sentiments that the president exhibited then.
When you're in prison, you say, okay, when we get out, these bastards, we're going to deal with them.
We've had a total breakdown of the rule of law.
Both of us needed to play our responsibility in order to save the nation.
We will still be there as a family together.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Tunisians are heading to the polls this weekend. It will be the country's second ever free presidential election. Over 7 million voters are registered at home and abroad. Here is CGTN's Adnan Shawashi with more.
President of the Independent High Authority for the Elections, Nabil Bafoun, expressed hope to see a high turnout in the early presidential elections. The ISI has distributed electoral materials to all constituencies in Tunisia and abroad before the end of the presidential campaign on Friday at midnight.
The Election Commission has 33 subcommittees, 27 in Tunisia and 6 abroad. 30,000 polling stations in 5,467 voting centers in Tunisia and 384 abroad will welcome voters.
4,500 Tunisian and foreign observers have followed the campaign. This number will increase on election day.
The civil society has formed a coalition of 27 associations to monitor the presidential campaign and elections. Observers will be spread across all the districts to monitor the election process. No major irregularities were recorded until the last day of campaigning.
The volume of the electorate is estimated at 7.88 million voters. The number of polling stations is 13,450 at home and 384 overseas.
I call on all Tunisians to cast their ballots. We cannot change the social and economic reality on the ground without voting.
Tunisian interim president noted that the objective of the election is a democratic and legal alternation of power. In addition, the credibility of the results will enhance the credibility of the state. Mohamed al-Nasser stressed the need to create all conditions for the integrity and transparency of the vote and its results.
Voting for the 2019 early presidential elections began in Australia on Thursday night. Some 387,000 Tunisian voters registered in 44 foreign countries will start voting as of Friday and for 3 days in 302 polling stations. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Sudan's new Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok is in South Sudan on a 2-day visit. Hamdok's visit aims to cement a new plan for peace talks with many of the rebel groups fighting against the government. The deal was brokered by Juba on Wednesday. This is Hamdok's first official visit since becoming premier. CGTN's Jane Keogh reports.
Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and the South Sudanese government held a 2-hour meeting to discuss pending issues in the 2005 peace deal. The deal ended 2 decades of war with Khartoum and paved the way to South Sudan's independence in 2011. South Sudan plunged into its own war 2 years later, leaving almost 400,000 dead, millions displaced. Tensions have since remained high between Khartoum and Juba over border disputes and the oil trade.
We have discussed many bilateral issues concerning outstanding issues in the peace agreement. Not the recent one, but the comprehensive peace agreement, where the issues of borders, issues of corporations, issues of economic and political issues are still to be discussed. And it is a great opportunity right now that there's a spirit to move on from these issues.
Analysts say the two nations have been pushed together by the grinding war in South Sudan. The war has defied several peace attempts and an economic crisis in Sudan, leading to a drastic collapse of the South's oil industry. The worsening economic crisis also sparked nationwide protests that triggered the fall of former President Omar Hassan al-Bashir. One of Bashir's last moves before his ouster was to broker a peace deal between President Salva Kiir and his rival rebel leader Riek Machar. The ruling Sudanese Sovereign Council aims to bring a swift end to insurgent conflicts that have plagued Sudan for years.
I'm very delighted to be here in my second home, Juba. As I promised early after I have been sworn in that my first visit outside Sudan will be to Juba, and we are here today. But looking for a very strategic, very distinguished relationship between our two nations, and the sky is the limit for this relationship. We hope to have a prosperous relationship that will address issues of trade, border issues, oil, movement, free movement of our people between the two countries, and all this agenda.
Observers are keen to see if Khartoum's new government will push Kir and Machar to advance on the implementation of the deal. The two men met this week in Juba for the first time in 5 months. They've agreed to form a transitional government by mid-November. Jane Kale, CGTN.
Authorities in Ethiopia say defense forces have captured an undisclosed number of ISIL members in towns bordering Somalia and Kenya. According to a senior defense official, the armed forces of the country also foiled attempts by ISIL to mobilize around various places in Ethiopia. CGTN's Gerun Chala has that story.
It is General Brahanu Jula, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff of Ethiopia's Defense Force, who told the media that several people were arrested due to their connections with ISIL in this country. The general said the apprehended people have been plotting attacks in parts of Ethiopia, including their plans of killing government officials. However, General Brahanu has dismissed claims by ISIL that it has a presence in Ethiopia as a psychological warfare. He said the people of Ethiopia will not be intimidated and terrified by this. ISIL has no capacity to enter and operate in Ethiopia. Ethiopia's government is said to have enough intelligence about the presence of individuals in different parts of the country who are trained and indoctrinated by ISIL militants. The Deputy Chief of Staff here also said, and I quote, "At the moment, we know who members of ISIL are, what they are doing, where they are moving around, who they have established contacts with, the identities of their members in cities, and what they are plotting. We will keep an eye on." End of quote. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And back to South Africa now, where recent crime statistics show over 21,000 people have been murdered in the past year. There has also been an increase in violent crime, particularly against women and children. And South Africans are calling on President Ramaphosa and the police to crack down on perpetrators. CGTN's Renee DeCarme reports from Cape Town.
Last year, South Africa's police minister described the country's crime stats as a depressing story, which was nothing to write home about. Now he's again admitted that the situation does not look good. 58 people are murdered in South Africa every day. A crisis which South Africa's Institute of Race Relations says is akin to a low-intensity civil war.
In the past year, since I joined the police ministry again, we have thoroughly analyzed and debated the crime trends with the management team of the police, with specific emphasis on the number of murders as our common denominator. Statistics have proven that the number of murders have drastically increased.
Rape and sexual offences had also increased, with over 52,000 cases reported in the past year, nearly 5% up since last year. Minister Bheki Cele told South Africa's Portfolio Committee on Police that most murder victims had been killed with firearms and knives, mostly by people they knew and over weekends as a result of arguments, misunderstandings or gang-related killings. He said murder, attempted murder and the sexual assault of children were also on the increase, and nearly 800 children had been charged with murder as well. Many in South Africa say the 2018-2019 crime statistics show that the police appear to be losing the battle against rising criminality. And it's time for the South African police to rethink the way it fights crime.
The people of South Africa appear to have lost trust in the South African police service, but at the same time the criminals on our streets appear not to fear the police. We live in a violent society, we know that, but what South Africans want to see is hope that there's a silver lining that the situation is turning around, and unfortunately we don't see that.
The police minister said President Cyril Ramaphosa had given the South African Police Service their marching orders to halve the number of violent crimes committed in the country in the next decade.
As a police service, we aim to achieve this goal in the shortest possible time. Therefore, all our resources and operational strategies have been channeled accordingly towards achieving this target.
Renad Al-Kam, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And to Nigeria, where a familiar threat of seasonal floods is raising concerns. Some parts of the country have already been hit, with the Emergency Management Agency warning residents to be on high alert. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
This is Lokogoma, a small area in Nigeria's capital city, Abuja. Recently, it experienced flash floods causing heavy traffic as cars forced their way through the water. According to the United Nations Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs Office, floods have engulfed several areas in the northeast of the country, affecting over 3,000 people. The situation needs urgent attention.
The government need to do something, equip them well, let them come to here, establish their outpost as an office to make sure they have a proper drainage. For me, I think this drainage here is very small for the kind of flood that's passing through here.
Maybe you check towards the back past ages, maybe some 10 years ago, what is the strength of the flood? Then you begin to construct your culvert, not just to do it anyhow, but to do the culvert according to the volume of flood that comes here. That will solve the problem.
Last year, some 200 people died as a result of floods, and over 500,000 were displaced. The Abuja Emergency Management Agency has warned that heavy floods may occur again. A list of areas at risk has also been made available by the agency.
Definitely, we should expect more flooding because what we saw before was just an urban flooding. What we are expecting in the next few or 3 weeks to come is the river flooding. And so people should be wary of that. We are prepared fully even before the rainfall, because it's part of our work to make sure that we're prepared ahead of time.
Poor drainage systems in many areas are a major cause of flooding. Motorists and residents will need to be on high alert to avoid getting swept away by the impending calamity. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Let's now head to Kenya, where a community project based in the western part of the country is helping to spur the growth of the agriculture sector. The initiative prepares compost manure from organic waste collected from a local town. Here is Beryl Ororo with that story.
On a typical day, this organic waste from Kitale town in Kenya's Rift Valley region would be transported to a local refuse center where it would be burned or just left to rot away. However, it is now being delivered here for much better use, that is, production of manure. David Ngige started Dajopen, a local community project which has been pushing local farmers to use organic manure. Once delivered, the waste is sorted and later dumped into a pit where enzymes are added. It is a meticulous process.
After decomposting for 4 to 6 weeks, the compost is ready, and then we remove it, and then we add some calcium from eggshells, from crushed eggshells, and then from there we sieve it, and after sieving it, we package it in bags ready for sale.
Kitale is an agricultural town with maize being its main produce. However, farmers have been experiencing low yields due to erratic rains and the use of synthetic fertilizers. Experts say these artificial manure have degraded soil fertility, leading to low harvests. That is what Dajopen is seeking to reverse.
Organic farming will really solve a lot of problems concerning organic carbon, because organic material is the source of all the nutrients, and it is also able to regulate the soil pH. Once we have our organic carbon right, organic matter right in our farms, we will not worry so much about soil acidity.
David started this organization in 2009. The project currently has 34 members. Although sales were low initially, community awareness and sensitization has seen sales increase marginally.
The fertilizer is affordable because it costs half the price of synthetic fertilizer, so it's very pocket-friendly for farmers. On top of that, the yield we get from maize has improved. We used to get 5 bags with synthetic fertilizer, but this one gives us more than 9 bags of maize. So it has improved things.
Each bag costs slightly above $12, which is almost half the price of synthetic fertilizers.
In the last planting season, we were able to make 2,560 bags of this organic fertilizer, each weighing 50 kilograms. At each bag we sell at 1,250.
Local farmers in Kitale and proponents of the Dajopen initiative are hoping that the organic way of farming will lead to healthier produce and a more sustainable mode of agriculture. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The news continues on Africa Live. Time now for our business segment with Raman Young.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business. The World Bank has lifted a freeze on lending to Tanzania. And Zambia has cut its growth outlook for 2019 in half, citing a combination of adverse weather and debt service obligations.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in East Africa, where the World Bank has approved a $450 million loan to Tanzania, signaling the release of the first tranche of the funds to the East African nation. Now, the funding comes from the bank's International Development Assistance Unit, which gives grants or low-interest loans, essentially, to the world's poorest countries. It covers a poverty reduction program designed to help around 5 million Tanzanian nationals. The country has been working to unlock $1.7 billion in funding from the bank. That was frozen last year over concerns around government policies, like a law, for example, that made it illegal to question official statistics and expelling pregnant girls from public schools. According to the World Bank, it has been engaging with the government of Tanzania on a range of policy matters. Further south, Zambia has revised its 2019 economic growth forecast down, essentially cutting it in half really, to around 2% from an initial forecast of 4%. According to the country's president, Edgar Lungu, adverse weather conditions have affected the energy and agricultural sectors, and that, in effect, will have an adverse effect on growth. In a State of the Nation address in Parliament, Lungu also said that Africa's second largest copper producer would strive to dismantle domestic arrears and maintain public debt within sustainable levels. Zambia's external debt rose up sharply to $10 billion by the end of 2018 compared to $8.74 billion just a year earlier. And that in turn has stoked fears consistently in the market that the Southern African country is headed for a nasty debt crisis. Over in West Africa, Nigerian authorities have announced plans to increase value-added tax rate on goods to 7.2% as it seeks to plug a budget shortfall. Currently, Nigeria has a VAT rate of 5%. 5%. It's less than a third of the average in ECOWAS, and it's among the lowest in the world. Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed is implementing measures designed to wean Africa's biggest oil exporter off its long-standing and very heavy reliance on revenue from oil and gas sales. Now, the proposed tax increase, however, is not final. It needs to be approved by legislators first. Raising taxes in Nigeria remains a massive challenge. Most businesses are not registered, and the size of the informal economy is massive. Just last year, Nigeria raised about $17 billion in taxes, and it wants to double that this year. In the meantime, business confidence in South Africa has dropped to a 20-year low. Figures out this week showed a strained economy taking a toll on the country's ability to do business. According to the latest data from the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, business confidence dropped to 21 index points in the third quarter from 28 in the one before. Here's CGTN's Sumitra Naidu with the latest.
4 out of the 5 sectors that make up business confidence deteriorated in the third quarter, with retail and wholesale traders recording the biggest declines. Confidence hasn't been this low since the 1998 emerging market debt crisis.
It's a shocking figure, but not unexpected. I haven't seen a figure as low as that in many, many years. Anything above 50 means you're in expansion territory. Anything below 50 means you're in recessionary, effectively. And at 21, you're in deep trouble. And this is very much in line with what the governor of the Reserve Bank, Lesetja Kganyago, talked about a couple of months ago, when he said that we are in the longest downturn since 1945.
The latest figures show 7 out of the 13 sub-indices fell in August. 4 improved, while 2 were unchanged from the previous month. The month-on-month decline was attributed to a decrease in merchandise export volumes, a weaker rand exchange rate, and declining all-share prices on the JSE. The figures suggest that 8 out of every 10 business people are discontent with the current economic environment. The private sector is still reluctant to spend on any expansion or to employ new people.
It's imperative that the private sector invest. They've got a lot of spare cash, because without that, again, that would be a way of getting movement in this economy. But without it, it's not going to happen. So I think a dose of realism has to come in place from government, where you have the unions, you have government, you have the private sector, all coming together and trying to work out and thrash out a mechanism whereby you can get realistic projects. You can get the private sector coming in and investing with confidence.
There was some respite amidst the bleak data. Credit rating agency Moody's issued a statement easing fears of an imminent downgrade.
They said the likelihood of a downgrade of South Africa's foreign debt in November is very low. So I think that speaks volumes. Moody's is right behind Cyril Ramaphosa. So I think Cyril has still got an awful lot of friends out there in the West, and certainly amongst the business community in South Africa. All of the ratings agencies, probably even including Fitch, they're supportive of South Africa. They want this country to succeed.
The focus now moves to the Reserve Bank's MPC meeting next week in the hope that more relief will be on the cards to help stimulate spending again. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
One last story for you. The restaurant industry is evolving pretty fast. Mobile devices have made ordering food a lot easier, and you could say that convenience has fueled growing demand for speedy, on-demand service, and not necessarily in a physical restaurant. Here's CGTN's Mark New now with the details on the growth of the virtual restaurant.
At Top Round Roast Beef, the staff is busy making its signature sandwich to serve a restaurant teeming with customers. But at the very same kitchen, they're also busy preparing delivery orders for Red Ribbon Chicken, TR Burgers and Wings, and Ice Cream Custard by Top Round. These 3 brands only exist online. They're virtual restaurants.
If you're at home, you're looking for something to order. If you want burgers, you're searching burgers. Which Top Round isn't going to show up on your burgers. You know, Top Round is its own little niche as far as roast beef sandwiches. But then if you're ordering fried chicken sandwiches, you're going to type in fried chicken. And if you're searching ice cream, you're going to type in ice cream. So from a brand perspective, everything has its own identity. So there's essentially 4 times the opportunity to get an order.
Top Round Roast Beef used to close at 9 in the evening. Now it's open till 2 in the morning. And between the hours of 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., 95% of the deliveries occur. Uber Eats first approached Top Round a year ago to join its app delivery service and spin off various virtual restaurants. Today, Top Round uses at least 5 different delivery services, including DoorDash and Postmates. This man delivers for Grubhub and Caviar, where he says he can make close to $25 an hour, including tips. Mohammed Al-Madani delivers for Uber Eats 6 to 8 hours a day.
Flexibility. Yeah, I can work anytime I want. Like, it's my main source of income, you know?
No restaurant wants to get into that delivery business. It's an awful part of their business. They just want to focus on getting customers. They want to get takeout. They want to handle delivery somewhere else. They're happy to give a cut to those delivery services. The problem is you need economies of scale. You need density for those services to work. So it turns out that same driver, maybe having 3 different badges on them, that's really what's going to happen.
The virtual restaurant market has also resulted in ghost kitchens, like this one in Pasadena, California, called Kitchen United. Numerous online restaurants only share the kitchen facilities to fulfill their delivery orders. Kitchen United does have a small dining area where customers can come in for service too.
It's a decentralized approach, just like the same way you look at Uber or you look at Lyft in terms of the ride-sharing services. There's a lot of extra capacity that's sitting out there, so we're going to see a lot of ghost kitchens emerge. And you also might see the model that actually happens in airline food service, right, or in large institutional food service, where everything's made in one place and it's done cook chill and then delivered somewhere else.
Lopez says he's not a fan of the ghost kitchen concept because he likes to make sure he still has a direct connection with his customers. But he admits the industry is changing rapidly as delivery orders now account for 75% of his business. Work News, CGTN, San Francisco.
I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be looking at operations at the JSE, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They were disrupted by protesters against gender violence in South Africa. But what solutions do the protesters have in mind, and what do they want companies to do about it? We'll find out at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Richard.
Thank you so much, Rama. We have so much more amazing, wonderful, and inspiring stories coming your way. Let's take a look at the headlines. Thousands of prisoners pardoned in Ethiopia to mark the beginning of a new year. We take you to a former detention center.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Ethiopia is ushering in a new year, the year 2012. The country's government has pardoned over 7,000 prisoners from different parts of the country as a gesture of goodwill for the new year. It is also planning to turn a former detention center into a museum. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi visited and filed this report.
The Mekalawi Detention Center in Addis Ababa struck fear into Ethiopians for 4 decades. Opened in the 1970s by the military junta of Mengistu Haile Mariam, it held thousands of people deemed to be anti-government. After the regime fell in 1987, the prison stayed open, used by successive governments to detain opponents until 2018.
I have been here for 2 months and 12 days. Yeah. All the days the prison was closed. We didn't get any sunshine and any electrical light also. For 2 months and 12 days, I have been here with my another victims in terrorist conduct. We accused in terrorist conduct before, like 5 years ago.
The police hit you. They brought you to dark rooms for
infliction.
Former detainees say this small room would hold more than 20 people, confined almost 24 hours a day. They were given just 20 minutes each day to use the bathroom. The center was shut down in 2018. The government now plans to make it a museum to act as a constant reminder of the need to respect human rights and rule of law. Some of those who came to view it were happy with the decision.
For sure, we cannot say that we are just seeing the right change, but thanks to Almighty God, just we are seeing changes. You know, all the changes are what we expect from our governments. Hopefully, we can see more changes.
When he took over power in 2018, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed promised to end the practice of arbitrary detention. He instituted judicial reforms to win back faith in the justice system. This aims to include revising terrorism laws so they can no longer be used against political opponents.
Performance management is another key area for our judges because it's challenging to evaluate the performance of a judge because we want to respect the independence of the judges, but at the same time, there should be some form of accountability. So we want to study and adapt relevant international standards in terms of performance evaluation.
But the reforms are being put at risk by recent ethnicity-based conflicts in parts of the country. Some former detainees at Mekalawi say not enough has changed. In 2018, the Ethiopian parliament passed a law providing for the establishment of a reconciliation commission aimed at mending fences between ethnic groups after years of conflict. It is yet to be fully operational. But for visitors to this former detention center, opening these once feared cells to public viewing is already an important step forward. Koleton Johi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
An art exhibition promoting cultural exchange has kicked off in the city of Durban in South Africa. It has brought together 13 artists from China and South Africa. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
Exploring both traditional and contemporary art forms, bringing together artists from China and South Africa. The 2019 Cultural Art Exhibition in Durban creates a space for shared dialogue and creativity.
The important thing is that this exhibition, though, initiates a very different dialogue. It's two different cultures, groups, peoples speaking through the medium of art. Art, what you see is not always what is meant or intended, so I think that's brilliant.
Art lovers in South Africa also had the chance to explore China's heritage. A master of calligraphy and engraving presented stone seals and scrolls of ancient poetry and literature. The joint exhibition is hosted by the Durban Art Gallery and the Confucius Institute at the Durban University of Technology.
Today, the city of Durban is very excited to be hosting this very important art exhibition that celebrates the relations between South Africa and People's Republic of China in using art as a medium of sharing experiences, but also growing friendship and cooperation between our two countries.
The two-month exhibition will carry on until November this year. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up. Here's what's ahead. Athletics Kenya has named 49 athletes who will represent the nation at the IAAF World Championships following the conclusion of the intense Doha 2019 trials in Nairobi on Saturday.